Yuga Labs should not be doing a land sale at all. Why? Two really straightforward reasons. First of all, in terms of a community strategy, it's a big fat loser. It's a terrible community strategy. We'll talk about why. It's also long-term, I think, a terrible economic strategy, and we'll talk about why. So on the community front, there was a leaked deck from Yuga Labs a little while back that showed their plans for this broader metaverse and talked a lot about the bigger Yuga ecosystem that they were planning on building. And that leaked deck said they want to invite the larger NFT community into the Bored Ape ecosystem, call it. They know Bored Apes are wildly expensive. This is a problem that all NFT projects face. We talked about it. I talked about it extensively with Doodle's co-founder Poopy. Like, if you only have 10,000 NFTs or, add mutant apes, 30,000 NFTs, whatever, like, how do you get more people into your ecosystem? But I'd say go even broader. Like, forget trying to invite the larger NFT community in. If you're Yuga Labs, you're trying to get the whole freaking world in. You want 8 billion people into your ecosystem. That's how big you should be thinking. And it's the attention economy. I mean, Bored Apes should want to be the oasis from Ready Player One. Like, Bored Apes should be shooting for, Yuga Labs should be shooting for every human on the planet puts on a headset every day and 100 times a day are logging into the Bored Apes metaverse, right? Like, why not? The problem is they're not going to do that with 55,000 pieces of land. It's never going to hold 8 billion people. So you're limiting the number of community members realistically that can fully participate in your ecosystem. Now they may say, no, we're not, people, 8 billion people maybe can be on these 55 plots of land. No, inevitably you are limiting the number of users you are going to have. Let's talk about why. Roblox. Roblox is the perfect example. Roblox has benefited from huge network effects. People's friends are on there building games, so they want to get on there and build games. And everybody's able to participate because there's an infinite amount of land. So there's an infinite potential for user-generated content. This should be the most obvious concept in the world for those of us in Web3. You want to maximize the community's ideas. You want to open source this. You want anybody with a good idea to build a game in your world or to build atop of the game that you've already created. In the case of Yuga Labs, they clearly have some specific gaming ideas and stories and concepts in mind, but you should want people to be able to build on top of that. And so finally, Axie Infinity is literally dealing with this right now. Axie Infinity did a land sale a couple of years ago at this point. They've done very little with that land. And they alluded to and sort of mentioned earlier this year that they would likely be giving out free land at various points in addition to the land that they've already sold to people. Now, this, of course, made the community furious, the people who hold the Axie Infinity land, because they felt like, are you kidding me? Like, I spent all this money on the land, and now you're going to dilute the share of my land by giving out free land. But Axie wants to give out free land because they've recognized this exact problem that Yuga Labs has now just painted themselves into, which is they don't actually want to limit the creative potential of their universe by who can afford to buy the land and therefore determine what gets built. Limited land means limited builders, means limited upside potential. That's just the reality. Okay. Why is this economically stupid? Yuga Labs has now just set themselves up to be beholden to 55,000 landholders. They are expected to create a return for these 55,000 landholders who may or may not themselves do anything to boost the value of the land, who may or may not themselves do anything to boost the value of this community. Again, this should be a very obvious concept to anybody who's in Web3. Yuga Labs should end up feeling beholden to whoever is creating the most value, is being the most productive, is doing the most in their metaverse. That's who they should be rewarding. Not rewarding the 55,000 people who happen to be available on a Saturday night at 9 p.m. Eastern and had the ape coin to buy into their land sale. Like, that's not inclusivity. This is a dynamic you see play out in other failed land-like contexts where you have speculators who buy up land and then just sit on it and don't do anything productive with it necessarily. or then lease it out to somebody who can maybe do something productive. But they're just rent seekers. It's everything that Web3 wants to do away with, which is centralized control, and put the power and the benefit instead into the hands of people who are actually the creators, who are actually the builders. So that's also, they've painted themselves into an economic corner now in a situation where they have to reward a bunch of people who were free on a Saturday night. Here's the other thing. By now having this economic duty, you could call it, obligation to these 55,000 landholders, they don't get to prosper as much from the potential here. So this is a funny thing. This is probably a broader point about something that's going on in Web3 that I think is very interesting. In like the rest of the business world, people are obsessed with recurring revenue. And like every business is trying to become a recurring revenue business where they have some sort of recurring revenue model. Roblox has a recurring revenue model, right? You can have a subscription to Roblox where you, on a recurring basis, are buying Robux, and then you get all sorts of other benefits for being a part of their ecosystem. The NFT world is obsessed with one-time purchases that get you like lifetime access benefits. And in theory, the recurring revenue here is secondary sales. But that's not the kind of consistency that makes you comfortable if you're reading like a profit and loss statement, or, like you're reading financial papers. You want to know that every month you have whatever, your Netflix with your X number of subscribers every month paying. And so I think there's a really interesting potential with recurring revenue models in metaverses that is maximized when you haven't done a land sale. Okay, so let me spell out another vision here, which is Bored Apes, Yuga Labs creates an open metaverse world where there's infinite amounts of land. They still build their awesome, incredible game that everybody wants to be a part of. But you also tap into the community and incredible user-generated content and games and this whole ape world that looks like the ape branding, but is tapping into community potential and becomes wildly popular and successful. Now, maybe you charge people on a recurring basis for continued access to that metaverse. And maybe, people pay monthly, and every time they pay their monthly fee on that recurring basis, they get a new NFT, and it's their monthly NFT that unlocks that world, and they get to log in with that NFT. And now every month they're getting their NFT that represents their re-upped subscription, and they're using that to unlock the world. I don't know, perhaps that's not the right way to do it, but I think there's so many interesting models here for metaverses. And I feel like all we see get tapped right now are just like one-time land sale, which just limits your potential in so many ways. It's disappointing too, because Yuga Labs does have the total potential to create the interoperable oasis, and they have the community, they have the brand recognition, they have the name brand. Like, they could have done it, and I think this was just a complete missed opportunity. So my prediction, though, is somebody will get this right. I'm sure there's projects working on it. I think there will be a big NFT project. I'm bullish. Like, I like the idea of these NFT projects building their own metaverses. I said it when Yuga Labs made their announcement. I think that makes a lot of sense. That's where the energy is right now, that people have connections to their NFTs. These NFT projects should be launching their own metaverses. They just shouldn't be doing it like this. So my prediction is you will have an NFT project that launches a metaverse, in my opinion, in the right way, which is to not have finite land sales, to have it be infinite. And I think Doodles could be it. I think Doodles is so savvy. I think they are building a very clear brand identity. I think they could create a very interesting world like this. Fuocious could also potentially do something like this. But if I were gonna, as a betting woman, I'd bet on Doodles, but somebody will do this. And that is my prediction. It will be an awesome NFT project that will succeed, not by doing a land sale, but by taking the longer term vision approach of creating consistently, day after day, an amazing metaverse experience that people want to be a part of and monetizing it later. This is the final point I'll make. Yuga Labs has raised, I think, $500 million from this land sale between primary sales and secondary sales. $500 million they have raised from this without having to really show proof of anything. And we need to start inverting that process where these brands start getting to monetize us after they've proven themselves, and building the metaverse first and monetizing it later, especially for these brands that already have a lot of money and have VC backing. I think that's the way to do it. Okay, long rant over.
so much for watching this episode of Overpriced JPEGs. If you liked this conversation, if you liked this episode, please go ahead and hit subscribe. It helps me out, it helps the show out, and it means you will get alerts and updates when we post new content. Thanks again.